Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgy kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. I love you guys. It's a great thing that you help support the channel. It's amazing. We're really grateful for you. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description. With all that out of the way, we're going to talk about the Bard and a couple of changes coming up. So first and foremost, we are going to be doing some changes. We are going to start doing lore videos, which is something we are super interested in because we love the story behind Dungeons and Dragons. And we are going to start doing less about classes because even with 2024, there really wasn't too much of a change, and I don't see it really being beneficial for us to continue on that avenue. That being said, I did want to talk about the Bard a little bit today and what some of the concepts of it and what makes the Bard so difficult of a class to play. Now, the Bard has a lot of theory behind it. I mentioned this in a previous video. You can be anything and be a Bard. It's a great way to be a character that's charismatic, confident, and basically any kind of action hero ever can some way, shape, or form fit into a Bard kind of subclass. The interesting thing that I find important about a Bard is the difficulty setting that goes onto it. As a player, being a Bard, I always thought is a more challenging role. It is a harder character to play because I always feel like I always have to be on. And what I mean by that is my role playing has to be forward. I have to be kind of like involved in everything and be very flamboyant and extravagant with all my actions. And it works for a certain kind of Bard, but not every Bard has to be that way. You can really make the Bard your own and kind of tone down some of those things. You can be flashy when you're on and when you're performing in like taverns and whatever. But when you're not, you can be more reserved. You can use the excuse of trying to save your voice or whatever. Balancing that is really the concept I always had the most difficulty with. Not only does that pose a role-playing situation where now you have to kind of calculate different facets of what makes your Bard, but you also have to handle the mechanics of the Bard in D&D. And before 2024, the Bard had a very difficult place to be in. Most of its spells are enchantment and illusion, so if you're not a debuffer or you're not into debilitating enemies or buffing your party, most of those spells you're going to hate. And but that's kind of what a Bard is. Like, you're kind of meant to kind of flow, control the ebb and flow of what makes a character move. The positive strength, slowing down, strengthening, debuffing. That is important to what a Bard is. But that's what makes it so hard to play, because they're not popular spells, they're not high damage spells, so it does add an even higher difficulty rating. And then finally, their offensive attacks, their base ones are not really very potent. They're, usually all their weapons require dexterity. So yeah, dexterity is a very important stat, but charisma is your main spellcasting stat. And if you don't dump a lot of points into charisma, you're going to feel those effects unless you're just strictly buffing your party members, in which case you don't need any charisma. But again, Bardic Inspiration, it all kind of falls to that. So needing to use a high charisma does hurt you in situations where you're not using like leveled spells. 2024 fixed that. They gave you True Strike, which updated a lot to make it kind of work like Booming Blade, but it works as you make a spell attack with charisma as your attack roll and damage modifier, which solves 90% of your problems. You also have a ranged spell attack that is an actual spell attack roll. I forget what it's called. It's something Will of the Wisps or something like that. But it's charisma, it does damage, it works to facilitate that. So now you don't need dex, and that definitely crosses a big bridge for the Bard, making it easier to play, making it more accessible to play, especially at lower levels where you might only hit level 5 before you complete a campaign. Your Valor Bard is dynamically better now because you can just focus on charisma and still make those attacks. The concepts that they did in 2024 to bridge that gap to make the Bard better, I think really follow through. It's a really easy class to get confused at, to not want to be disheartened by, because if you're not a swords Bard, I'm pretty sure many of you do not see many Bards unless they happen to be heavy roleplay oriented players. The other thing I really want to talk about is the importance of who the Bard is to the party. Because once you define who the Bard is to your character and you've developed that idea, then you're in this perfect situation where you can now work within that team and you're confident and you're set. But every party has expectations. I know when, in my mind, when I hear someone say, oh, I'm going to be a cleric, my thought process is, oh, all right, so now I don't have to worry about healing. And that's really not necessarily fair. And to be honest, I'm a perfect example of this. I hate playing supporting characters. I do not like healing. I do not like buffing. I prefer to debuff or deal damage or tank. That's kind of like my foray. I don't really enjoy the other facets. I will do it if it's necessary. I do feel that everyone should put in their fair share and have a healing spell if they are available to get one, just to be able to help the party. Because I think that's just right. I don't like doing it. I don't think someone else should do all the heavy lifting. But when you're playing a character that does have certain abilities, other people always tend to have this idea once you mention that. And I don't think it's necessarily fair. I think it should be totally fine to be a bard and not pick a healing spell or a buffing spell and just do whatever else you want. Personally, I would rather debuff the enemy than buff the party, but that's just me. But you are fighting that expectation, especially when it comes to people who heal. And again, I don't like it. So players that do like to play support, I'm always really appreciative of, because it is a difficult thing for me to do. And it's something that does definitely create a positive impact in the game, making it significantly easier and making it so that way we can overcome difficulties that we couldn't without them. And that's just a fact. So be appreciative of your support players. But a bard is one of those characters that as soon as they show up, everyone's expecting bardic inspiration. Everyone's expecting buffs. Everyone's expecting heals. And no one's expecting the bard to do anything beyond that. So it's one of those things that's difficult, and I think that dissuades people from playing the bard. I think the bard has gone through a lot of improvements in 2024, as I believe almost every single class has. But there's a certain level of difficulty that does come inherent with meeting your own expectations and balancing the expectations of others. So I think one of the things about the bards is when you pick your subclass, it defines kind of what you're planning to do. So if I said I'm going to be a Whispers bard, then automatically people are going to assume, okay, I need to escape spells or spells that give me utility to get in and out of things. I'm going to need a lot of infiltration stuff to help out with that, which doesn't leave a lot of room for other things. I'm going to be a swords bard, so I'm going to be in melee doing attacks and burning my bardic inspiration, so that's just off the table for anyone else to use. I'm going to be a valor bard. Okay, now I expect to have bardic inspiration going through me pretty regularly throughout combat. And I think the bard and their subclass does a great job with that, because it sets that expectation. It is not easy to play a bard. A bard is one of the more complex things because their spells are just harder to use. You can't just throw Bane out every 10 seconds and just be like, oh, well, it didn't work on this character, but, Fireball would have been better. Like, you gotta balance those things out and see kind of like the long term of what it is you're doing. Bane is a fantastic spell. Making it harder for you to get hit is worth it. Bards do excel in social situations and adventuring, and those kind of take the backseat, especially in like videos when you're seeing min-maxing and things like that, because nobody min-maxes to be the adventurer. Everyone min-maxes to be in combat, and it's harder to do that with a bard just straight, without taking other things from other classes and things like that. That's why you constantly see Hexblade Swords Bard, Hexblade Valor Bard, Hexblade whatever, because it gives you that bonus that you need to combat and makes it easier on your ability scores. So what it means to be a bard is really up to you, and that's really, really important, especially considering the variety of availability for what you want to do as a bard. I think you can excel in any facet. I think your best opportunity is through the 2024 bard. Definitely go through it. Definitely use some of those spells, because it really bridges that gap and makes it so much easier for you to focus on other things, because it kind of standardizes what you need to do. It is a great thing to have a bard in a game. It is an even better thing to have a bard that really understands their role, and you can really bring out a huge change in party from it. Bards are not one of the most important things I want to say about bards, and this will be like the last thing I say. Bards are not the stay in the back character. And I don't mean that just from like a tactical point of view in combat. What I mean is they can be leaders. They can be captains. They can be that fire team leader, whatever it is, like that in control, kind of like I'm the big bad. You can do all of those things with the bard. The way you do that is the way you carry your character's balancing between role-playing, adventuring, and party responsibility. And doing so will really give you that option to grow into whatever role you do see fit. It's important. I think it's a really great thing when you do get to see a bard kind of come forward and hit that moment where like they're the anchor to the whole party, because they're one of the best classes to do that, because a warlock isn't going to be the guy that's holding everybody's hand. The rogue, again, not that person, but the bard can pull a great party together. They can create a great leader, and you don't have to do some flimsy person who just plays music and sleeps around. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be that unless that's who you want to be, in which case you're definitely needed anyway, because someone's got to take care of that job. But you don't ever have to fall into a circumstance where a bard isn't a main character kind of character. And I think that's really important to understand and to utilize. Because you don't have to just be a paladin to be a hero. You can be a hero as a bard. Like, you can really push that forward. And I think that's one of the better things about the D&D bard as opposed to bards in other video games or other kind of ttrpgs. That being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. If you've made it this far, definitely hit the like and subscribe. We are definitely moving away from doing videos the way we were before, where we were doing a lot of pictures and things like that, and just kind of not talking to you guys. We're definitely going to try this and see how it works out, and we're jumping into lore videos soon, so that's going to be something we're really excited about. With all that said and done, thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and a big thank you to our good friends over at Critical Failures. We're part of a live stream game. We just started to send it to Aberrant, which is a lot of fun. Definitely check it out, and thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.